It is Locked On Jazz for the 14th of July. Is Donovan Mitchell heading to New York, or is there a game of cat and mouse taking place? What do the Knicks have to offer, and how much does RJ Barrett matter, and is he good? It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, hopefully making it better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcast apps as well as on YouTube. Thanks to everyone who's joining us live on YouTube. Thumbs ups are appreciated. 5 stars on the podcast apps are appreciated. And I think I can be very analytical. I can be very kind of I think that's a role here to try to explain what's going on. But I think the first comment in the comments section should be thrown out there right away. And Ben says, I'm sad. And if, in fact, we're on the verge of trading Donovan Mitchell a week after trading Rudy Gobert, I'm with you. It's hard to grasp and feel this transition. It might all make sense. It might all be the right moves. It probably is, frankly. Once you've made the Rudy move, maybe it is the right move to trade Donovan, though I think there's more to it than that. Trading Rudy for that package might have been the right move, but right, these are our guys. We own their jerseys. We're rooting for them. We're cheering for them. We're attached to them. And all of a sudden, the idea of not having them, the idea of going through a complete rebuild, as successful as Danny Ainge has been with it in the past, as successful as some other teams have been with it in the past, I think it's, the second comment in the comment section from a Jazz fans from Cody is scary times for Jazz Nation. I might not use scary, but uncertain, uncomfortable, unclear. I'm with you. And so before we kind of dive into the whole analytical aspect and what's going on and how I'm interpreting things and this and that, I would say, I just want to say, I feel it. I literally just said to my wife a moment ago, wow, are we really wow. I feel the same thing you do. I think every Jazz fan does. I'm sure Ryan Smith feels that. I'm sure Danny Ainge, who's got to be, and Justin Zanuck in the front office probably feels that a little bit. And I think there's a really interesting analysis in a few days. Probably I'll work on it and have it Monday or Tuesday and just what happened? And frankly, you're way better off doing this early than late. And I think to all of us, it feels a little early. I don't think it feels to all of us really now, we were done. The window, I don't know that all of us really wanted to grasp, but the window is completely closed. And it's going to, and there's some post analysis that to understand it. And frankly, it's super interesting. We'll do it. And I've told a lot of people, I've been around a lot of people and I interact with coaches and some things like that and fans and people have an interesting, and I said, last year's one of the most fascinating years I've ever been a part of. A team literally just collapsed on itself internally, externally, in every way. We saw it in fourth quarters. We saw it in press conferences. We saw it in energy on the court. And so, maybe we were just all in a little bit of denial that we were at this point because you just didn't want it to be true. Here's the other point of view, right? James just said, I don't understand everyone's confusion. We are worse now than we were before trading Rudy. If our goal is a championship, we're not doing it with the current roster as much as I wish we could. I think everyone's right here. I guess that's what I wanted to open the show with today. Your emotions on every level. I can make sense. I've taken us through the decision-making tree on the show a bunch of times. It makes sense. I'm with you that it's hey, that was a good run, but we clearly didn't have it, right? We went out into Denver, we went out to the Clippers, and we went out to Dallas, and it was all right, that's, you can keep banging your head against the wall, or but on the other end, I feel the the sadness. Like, and just another comment comes in live on the chat from Teaching by Annie. I feel sad. Change is hard. It feels like we could have had something special with a few tweaks. I think all of these comments are dead on and perfect. Like, sometimes I think the job of this show is to relay and feel you and how you are feeling right now. And I'm right there. I'm right there on that feel. I'll continue this show and kind of get into some pieces of what's going on and what I think's going on and all of that and get it. But I just wanted to start there. I kind of like group hug, right? Group hug, no matter where you are, all together on this. And I think all of us are having like multiple thoughts at the same time. So group hug, like, it's wild to be seeing this. And there's also a little bit, I think, of, and I don't want to call it small market feeling, but I always feel like, and I think Jazz fans feel this, a little persecuted, right? Like, everyone's always talking about, oh, you got to break them up. Oh, they're having such problems. Oh, this. And like, part of this is like this awful admission, like some of that might have been right. Or, oh, Donovan's going to New York. Like, how many times you see a Knicks fan like, thanks for borrowing Donovan? And now, like, like, if some of that's right, it just feels like almost like you're getting bullied and the bully won. And I'm with you on that one as well. So I kind of feel all your emotions toward this. And it is feeling as though Locked On NBA Big Board will become our second listen. No question. So I there. All right, let's go through a few things that I want to talk about today. Donovan's awesome as a person and a player. Let's not get lost in this fandom. He's not wearing our outfit anymore if we trade him, and he's something different than he was. He was amazing the day he got here. He gave us the greatest relief a fan base may have ever been given after Gordon signed. He gave us joy and exultation and terrificness, and he's an amazing player. He's a bona fide legit scorer. He's as good a scorer as there is in the league. He's an elite pick and roll ball. He's one of the great shooters in the game. He was bad defensively last year, no question. I don't think he had a good year last year, as good as he could have. I think he went through the natural progression of what great players and all-stars do, and I think he went through a little bit of a, trying to figure out what he is in an all-star and where he fits in that, but he is great. He's been great to the community. He's been great to the city. He's been great on the court. He's gone to 4th of July barbecues. Like, let's not change who we think this guy is. And I can tell you from all my personal interactions, it feels real. It's not a sham. He's not an act. These can be little subtle things, but like, walks by and says hi, is not big timing in private, like, is a real dude. So let's not have that narrative change in any way, shape, or form just because we make if in fact the Jazz make a business decision that they're trading Donovan to get better pieces for our future, or that Donovan's timeline no longer matches our timeline. Let's not miss that. Anyone who's interacted with Don is outstanding. And I'm not Pollyannaing this. Like, Don's had some being an all-star and what a star is. And I remember a conversation I had with him this year where he's like, just being Donovan Mitchell's a lot right now. And that's weighed on him. And so he's lost a little of the joyousness. He's lost a little bit of the zest. He probably wasn't in as good as physical shape as he should have been last year for whatever reason. If the data says that, right? Late fourth quarters, defense, some things like that. He's still incredible. Like, you can nitpick, but don't get lost in it. He's incredible. The other one I do think is that there's a little feeling of cat and mouse going on here. Like, I don't know, like the turn of like, we're not taking calls, which was always ridiculous, as we talked about yesterday. Like, Danny Ainge's not just hanging up the phone when someone calls, like, hi, hey, how's it going? Hey, by the way, about Donovan, like, we're not doing that. So they were always taking calls. But this kind of twist that, like, he's available, to me feels like there's two parts that might be going on here. And I'm just speculating. I don't know anything. One is that there might have been a little CAA, Donovan's agency, looking at the Jazz roster and saying, like, whoa, that's not great for our client. And I don't think any of us could disagree with that right now. As our roster looks right now, we don't look like a playoff team. And Donovan suddenly, scoring 30 points a game on a not great team, that might not be great for their client. And so that maybe there was a little of that going on, in which case there could be a little bit of this, like, hey, Don, we're trying. The Knicks just didn't come to the table with anything worth it. Sorry, we didn't make the deal, and we move on. there could be a little cat and mouse game going in that regard. And there could be a little cat and mouse going with, hey, we're talking to the Knicks. If anybody else out there wants to like make their move for Donovan, now's the time. The Knicks have enough draft capital now that they're at least interesting. So we're actually talking to them, and they're the favorite. But he's got 4 years left on his deal, and now's the time if you're going to do it and trying to bring another team into the mix. You know, my comment yesterday was I thought we would wait because there's no the desperate teams have made their moves. Atlanta was desperate, Minnesota was desperate, and Danny has thrived on desperation when making deals in his career. And the Knicks, having signed Jalen Brunson, didn't feel to me as though that they're desperate right now. But maybe Danny and Justin and the Jazz are creating a little desperation in a cat and mouse game, or maybe they're just saying to Donovan, like, hey, we tried. We get the situation's not ideal. We tried. We'll continue to try, but they didn't step up right now, and so we couldn't get it done. So, you know, I think that's worth thinking. The one negative on this, and I mentioned this yesterday, is Donovan's mind has to have left Utah. It's natural. Any time you've ever looked for another job, you've done this as well. This is not unique to Donovan. And you start to think about taking a different job. Part of your mind and part of your experience goes there. So part of Donovan at this point has started considering what it would be like to play for someone else. That could be hard to wrap back. That could be really, really hard to wrap back. So that's worth a thought on this. All right, what is the Knicks trade package? What are their assets? What would the Jazz want make it worthwhile if it's a straight one-on-one deal there? And then the RJ Barrett and what his role is in this, the former third pick of the draft, and whether or not he matches the Jazz timeline or is actually perfect for the Jazz timeline, or if he's even good, which is a totally legitimate discussion on that. Today's show, Locked On Jazz, is brought to you by Summit Capital. These are some interesting people that invested in Locked On, David, Jeff, and all really, really good guys, and Matt as well. Really, Matt primarily is who I dealt with. I don't know why I just put him third. But anyway, Summit Cap is a local investment group out of Utah County. They're made up of those successful business operators. David and Matt and Jeff have all done amazing things. Super fun to work with. So they invested in Locked On. I can tell you on our personal experience, never once was it like that private equity firm that's like, what's our outdate? How are we doing? We'd give them their quarterly updates. They'd ask really good questions. They weren't media experts. They trusted us to run our business, but they asked super questions. That's what they're actually looking for now. They're looking for entrepreneurs who are maybe working for a company right now where the owner's ready to be bought out or the owner's not ready to take the company to the next level. So you buy them out. Summit Capital provides you with the capital to do it. You get the equity in the company. They get some equity as well. And you work together to take where you're working, this company you know so well, to new heights. They're also looking for owners that seek to sell their businesses, entrepreneurs seeking capital to help grow their businesses. And then the unique thing we're talking about is people actually know the business are working right now, but maybe the company, the owners aren't ready to take that next step, or they're ready to get out. So reach out to Matt at 801-796-2033. That's 801-796-2033, or email lockedonjazz@summitcaputah.com. Lockedonjazz@summitcaputah.com. Jeff is the biggest Jazz fan ever, so you might need to take a minute with him if you end up talking to him and making sure that he's all right. Today's show is also brought to you by Rock Auto. Rock Auto, the family-owned business for do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto, they have everything you need in the unique old-school website without the flash, without the this, without the that. Why? Because they're saving you 30, 50, even 100% more on items on all the same parts you can get at a chain store or a car dealership. It's Rock Auto. There's just no reason any longer to go to the brick-and-mortar store with their limited space and their limited inventory and trying to kind of mix the round peg to the square round peg mix and match thing. Go to rockauto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Please write Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section. That's Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us box, so they know. It's Rock Auto. It's amazing selections, reliably low prices. It's all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. Maybe Locked On NBA Big Board is your second listen already. I'd go with Locked On NBA for now, or Locked On Knicks, though they don't talk a huge amount of the trade today. They did some summer league stuff. The day before, they did a big trade show. So if you're going to go back and listen to Locked On Knicks on that. All right, what is the Knicks draft capital? I think that's actually a really big question. So here's an interesting story that I have not been able to confirm yet. Maybe time will tell on this. But that there's a chance, there's a report by NBA Trade Report, which is a Twitter account that I don't know particularly well. It has 14,000 followers. And I don't know who they are. But they had an interesting report on the idea that the Knicks actually could trade consecutive draft picks. Now, I've been trying to get this confirmed from people in the know because they have acquired so many picks. So here are the 8 picks over the next 4 years that the Knicks have that are their situation. And that is they have their own 2023, their own 2024, their own 2025, and their own 2026 pick. They also have the 2023 pick of Dallas that is likely top 10 to convey. Excuse me, top 10 protected, likely to convey, right? So that pick, Dallas is not going to be one of the 10 worst teams. So that pick will be somewhere, if it's Dallas next year, they're going to be pretty good. It's probably in the mid-20s. They have Detroit's 2023 pick, which is a little sketchy because it's top 18 protected, which Detroit is going to not be. That's going to get protected. And then in 24, it has other protections. In 25 and 26, and then it converts to a second-round pick. So this pick is a little scary because there's a chance if Detroit never gets better that it never conveys. The way this works is a lot of times on picks, you can have protections, and then so it's top 5, top 10, top 15, top 20 protected, but then at some point that has to end because otherwise Detroit actually can't make trades as long as that's sitting out there. So they agree, hey, if in 2027 it's never conveyed, it just becomes a second-round pick or it expires. They have the 2025 they have a pick from Washington in 2025 that's 2023 that's lottery protected, and it's probably likely to convey in the 2024-2025 season. That is, and then they have Milwaukee's 2025 pick, which is top 4 protected. So that's likely to just convey in 2025. So, but Milwaukee with Giannis in 2025 still expected to be pretty good. That pick actually gets a little interesting because you're just playing an injury guess, right? That if you get lucky or they get unlucky and someone's injured in 2025, but as long as Giannis is around, that team's still going to be good. So in regards to draft capital, what you want from the Knicks is their picks. Now, the problem is that they have Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett and Mitchell. They might be good. They're also the Knicks. They're never going to be like horrendously terrible, probably, because they're trying to win and because they have Donovan. And so, but you want their picks and you want them unprotected. That's your first priority. And then you start playing with these next set of picks of what you might want. So the Dallas pick is going to be a 2023 pick next year. That would give you 4 first-round picks in that draft. Can you use those 4? Is that actually a model? It sounds good, but it's been hard for people to use multiple picks to trade up. The Washington 2023 pick is likely going to fall in 24 or 25. So that's an interesting pick, but it is lottery protected. So that's just a rotation player. You're just getting, like, when you view these picks, like, that's a rotation player. The Bucks 2025 is like a 50% chance for a rotation player. And the Detroit pick we talked about is probably the last on the list because there's a chance it never conveys. So I don't know whether this NBA trade report rule is true because and if I've missed it, I apologize. That they can actually trade 4 consecutive picks, and they've gotten around the Stepien rule. The Stepien rule is that you cannot trade consecutive draft picks. So if you looked at what the Jazz did with the Timberwolves, they got the 2023 pick, the 2025 pick, the 2027 pick, and the 2029 pick. And the reason for that is the NBA rules say you cannot trade consecutive draft picks. I'm not sure I understand why the Knicks would get around that with this, but that was one of the reports. So if that's the case, that's interesting because that can actually accelerate if you get their picks, why you would be doing this and be doing it sooner, and we'll see. By the way, the same site, which I'm not like, I'm not particularly, again, like I get nervous on Twitter, has a report that the Jazz are talking to Dallas about Jordan Clarkson. Dallas's 2023 pick is going to New York, so it'd have to be, if it's for a draft pick, it's for something there, and I'll dig into that in a second. That actually makes some sense. Without Jalen Brunson, Jordan Clarkson would be a perfect fit for Dallas. All right, so the other thing is, who do the Knicks have as players? So that's like the trade picks. Now, Donovan's making $30 million, and so there does feel as though you have to put in even Evan Fournier with 2 years left at $18 million. Some people are saying Julius Randle. You certainly would kind of want out on that. RJ Barrett's at $10 million. The names that got mentioned by Shams and Tony in the Athletic article include Quentin Grimes, and there's a lot of talk that the Jazz want people on rookie contracts. So, are you suddenly doing Evan Fournier, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, and Obi Toppin for Donovan Mitchell with a cadre of draft picks? And is that, like, that works? That Evan Fournier is the salary grab, and then you're playing a game for whether you think Obi Toppin can be good one day. He was the 8th pick of the draft. He happens to be particularly old. He's 6'9", 220. He's 24 years old. He kind of seems like he was a questionable pick at the time because he was old. He played 17 minutes a game last year. He's not a great shooter. He is a slam dunk champion. He finished the season with a little bit of a flash late in the year, which I think just shows you he has ability, but is always a little suspect. Shot 53% from the field, 31% from the three, and averaged 9 points a game. He's an interesting piece. That negative on him is coming out of the draft, he was just too old, and that he prospered late in his draft in his time. Emmanuel Quickley is an interesting one. He was kind of one of those Kentucky players that got kind of forgotten along the way. He's 6'3", 190. He's not really a 1. He's more of a 2. He has the ability to light it up and really shoot it. And score. He ended up shooting 39% this last year, which was not as good overall as his rookie year when he kind of came on by storm. He's one of those guys that, your nervousness is they got a lot of pub because he's in New York City, and not because he's actually great. He's in 2 years, he shot 39% from the field and 36% from three, playing 19 to 23 minutes, scoring 11 points. Like, he's just a scorer off the bench. Again, you're just looking for pieces. And then Quentin Grimes is a name that was actually mentioned and he's super interesting because he was a late first round pick in 2021, kind of had a tumultuous run through Houston, and is a kind of the same thing. He can just kind of light it up a little bit. He played 46 games in New York. Same thing. Like, he had good games in New York, so he gets a lot of pub. I almost am always reluctant on like New York guys because it makes me wonder whether any of it's real, or it's just publicity. It's so hard to I always wonder seriously on Emmanuel Quickley and Quentin Grimes, like, would you ever have heard of them if they played in Cleveland? And that makes it. So what is the Knicks package? That seems to be what we're talking about. Those kind of players, one salary fill and a bunch of draft picks. And then what order of picks can you get? And then I'll have to see if I can find the answer on this of whether or not the Knicks really can actually trade consecutive draft picks. I didn't understand the rule that way, that just because you have another pick means I thought it was you can't trade your own picks. That's the way I've always read it. But I will have to learn more. Didn't think I was going to have to, but will. The other question on this whole thing is RJ Barrett. And whether or not RJ Barrett is someone, as on our chat room here, I just lost it. Somebody just said we should insist here. From Dope Hop says we should insist on Barrett. Looking back reminds me of the next trade in the number 3 favors for Darren Williams. They should stay. They say untouchable, but so was Mitchell at the time. So we should insist on RJ Barrett. Should we? Let's discuss it today as we continue. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. They are just rolling right now. Yesterday was the big news of the Orange Dreamsicle, the Coke Puff version, the Coconut Brownie Chunk Puff, the Brownie Batter Puff, the Coconut Marshmallow Puff, the Churro Puff are all there and available. Today, the news is that Toffee Almond is back. I swear, every day they're coming up with something. So it is Built Bar. It's the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're just terrific, and they're amazingly filling. Well, this week I've been walking golf courses, watching my daughter, and you just kind of get off time for food and just grab a Built Bar at the turn and carries me through the way as I'm watching. Like, don't need to go grab a meal until I'm late, have time to actually do it. It's been great, and the macros are amazing. Built Bar has got 130 calories, 2.5 fat grams, 4 net carbs, 4 sugars, 6 grams of fiber, 17 grams of protein. For 130 calories, you get something that tastes like a candy bar that has 2.5 grams of fat, 4 grams of sugar, and 17 grams of protein on almost all of them. Some of them changed that. I was using, I think, the coconut bar right there. The coconut brownie chunk is 9 grams of sugar, which is a little more than 15. The orange dreamsicle is only 6 grams of sugar. The brownie batter is 7. So there's a little variation there, but you get the idea. Use the promo code LOCKED15. You get 15% off. That's the best deal you can get anywhere at built.com. It's 15% off. Today's show is also brought to you by Bet Online, betonline.net, where you can get all the latest news, information, betting odds, probably the next team Donovan Mitchell is going to go to. Yes, you probably can get that too. Not that any of us really want to play that game and bet on that, but I do think they have that out there. We, I think, posted at our national account, Locked On Sports, that is out there. So what are the go to betonline.net. You can get in on the latest action in Major League Baseball, the latest title odds, all the news and information that you want to have along the way. They have the Knicks at -105, the Heat at +400, the Celtics at +700, the Nets at +700, the Lakers at +900, the Warriors at +900, the Raptors at +1,000, the Kings at +1,000, the Cavs at +1,200, the Hornets at +1,400, and the Pelicans at +1,400. If I was the team that would go get Donovan, it'd be the Clippers. If I was Donovan, the team I'd want to go to is the Clippers, not the Knicks. Just the whole time I've thought this whole Knicks thing was a sham, that Donovan was actually going to wait out and get to the Clippers when Kawhi and Paul George was done. Because if I wanted a large market, I'd far rather be heading to to Los Angeles than New York. All right, a lot of great comments in the comment zone. Appreciate the audience jumping in live with us today. Is RJ Barrett a major piece of this puzzle? And this is super interesting. So RJ Barrett, if you don't know who he is the third pick of the NBA draft. He's 22 years old now. He was the number 1 player in the country out of high school. Took Canada to beat the USA in a international U19 game that was a massive story. He goes to Duke as their number 1 recruit, and a kid named Zion Williamson goes as their number 2 recruit. He's 22 now. He's 6'6". He's got a 6'10" wingspan. He scored 11 times last year. He scored 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists a game after the All-Star break last year. He has not been given a contract extension by the Knicks. So Zion Williamson and Ja Morant, the number 1 and 2 picks of this draft, have been given a contract extension and a max extension by the Knicks, by their teams. And RJ Barrett has not been given a contract extension by the Knicks, which lead you to believe that the Knicks might be willing to trade RJ Barrett in this deal, but because of the fact that if they don't really want to pay him the max, and they're already acquiring Donovan Mitchell, who's going to be paid the max, and they're going to get, and they have Jalen Brunson at a 30, do they believe that Donovan Mitchell, RJ Barrett, and Jalen Brunson are actually good enough to go win them a championship? And the answer is probably no. And so something in this picture doesn't entirely fit for them moving forward. And so, what do they do? Because that threesome is not going to get you anywhere. They need something else. So do they sign RJ Barrett with the intention of trading RJ Barrett as a future piece to find? Maybe. Do they not want to extend, or do they try to put RJ Barrett in the package for the Jazz because it actually doesn't really match where they are, and they'll use it, but then they have to make sure they have cap room, and they've done it. They Walt Perrin and the crew over there have done a nice job of kind of working that a little bit. So that's the first part of it. The next question is, where does RJ Barrett and the Jazz timeline work? If the Jazz are looking to start at the bottom, acquire draft picks, probably not win a few games, does RJ Barrett impact that? Or does RJ Barrett actually become the principal beginning next piece at 22, and his timeline's actually perfect? Or is RJ Barrett actually just not that great. And so his timeline's perfect because he becomes your primary scorer. He can score. He does all the things. He has massive numbers. And you actually move RJ Barrett for assets, and he's probably a better asset to move down the road than someone else. Like there's 3 different angles on RJ Barrett in how, whether he fits or not, that are really interesting. One, he's just not a part of your timeline. You're really far back. He's 22, 23. You're going to have to sign him to this extension. And then, or you sign him the extension and he's not part of your timeline. He puts up massive numbers. He increases his value. He gets better and better, and you trade him. Or the third aspect of this is that the Knicks extend him, and the Knicks are the ones who trade him. Here's what's interesting on RJ Barrett, and Mike Pina wrote a great piece in Sports Illustrated about this recently. It's not clear whether he's good or not. The counting numbers say he's terrific, right? 22 years old, 6'6", 6'10". I mean, good is a weird question. All NBA players are good. So, like, does he help you win? 30 points 11 times, 24 points a game post All-Star break. In his draft class, the 3rd pick of the draft now ranks 16th in win shares. He's got all sorts of metrics, like he's played more minutes than anybody at 22. He's scored like the 3rd most amount of points of anyone. He's got the free throw line. Like there's a bunch of things that say yes. And then his rim finishing is like 55%, which only LaMelo Ball of guys that get to the rim that much is worse. His scoring percentage on drives, which is really what his game is the lowest of anyone in the NBA. Now, let's make sure we put this in context. You go to B-Ball Index. He had the worst spacing of any team in the NBA, and he's playing on Tim Thibodeau's offense, which has never been great. All right, Thibodeau's been primarily defensive, and there's times where his offense is antiquated. At least that's the book on it. I'm not one to judge that because I don't really understand it that well, but that seems to be the feeling. On 500 pick and rolls last year, he was the 2nd worst player in the NBA. Again, now you have to make a decision on RJ Barrett, like on these advanced metrics. Are these advanced metrics good indication that he doesn't have it? Or is this a sign that he was on a team that didn't run enough movement, didn't enough around spacing, didn't have a roster, didn't have a point guard last year, didn't have the things it needed to have? And so RJ Barrett became the sole and only offensive item guy, along with Julius Randle, who's also playing isolation the whole time, that forced him into these low percentages. And if you actually go grab RJ Barrett, you have a wonderful asset for the future. So RJ Barrett's a super interesting piece because it's not clear that he matches what the Knicks want. It's not clear he matches what the Jazz want. And it really feels like someone's going to want him for a future asset that they could possibly move to get the right piece, as much as whether he's a major piece of the puzzle. Now, on the other end, if RJ Barrett turns out to be terrific, the Jazz just grabbed a 3rd pick of the draft that was behind Zion and Ja, and they've got one of their first pieces of this puzzle. So we'll see. All right. Back to where we started. Group hug, tumultuous times, hard to fathom, weird that we're there, feels like, oh my gosh. So that's where we are. Ask LOJ tomorrow. So send in your hashtag AskLOJ and give me your questions for a Friday edition of Locked On Jazz. Thanks very much for tuning in. Huge live audience today. We really appreciate it. Hope you're having a wonderful day amongst all of this as a Jazz fan. Wear your Jazz jerseys and your Jazz colors, whichever rebrand or old brand or purple that you want, with pride. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.